To the east, to Morrowind. Fear not, for I am watchful. You have been chosen.
Nope.
Welcome to Morrowind, you swit. You just woke up on the island of Vvardenfell, but you're not the Nerevarine or anyone of prophetic relevance. You're exactly as you are. No saves, no console commands, just mortal you, trying to survive in a very strange world. Luckily, Envy Ranger & Co. has a detection system that lets us know when some poor fool is dropped into one of the worlds within our coverage plan. We get paid to ensure you find a suitable home. Consider me your virtual real estate agent. Bill, our barely informed local life form, will be sent into Vvardenfell as your personal crash test dummy. Then we can rank the locations based on their livability. Only one location can go into S tier, but at the end of the day, the choice is yours. Our focus is on the cities and towns of Vvardenfell. If you want to live in some remote backwater village or try your luck with a nomadic Ashlander tribe, good luck. Each settlement on Vvardenfell is under the political control of one of 5 major factions. We'll cover them as we travel. Each one will shape your life in some way. Bill began his inspection in the dusty ashland city of Ald'ruhn. You'll quickly notice the unique bone mold architecture of House Redoran here. It doesn't just look like they live in the giant shells of long-dead crustaceans, they actually do. Quick bit of context. Morrowind is in the Empire right now, but they weren't invaded, they were incorporated by treaty. Redoran, among other great houses, don't approve, but they also know they just can't fight their way out of the situation. Here's an easy way to remember and understand Redoran as the conservative great house. They live in the past. Like literally, they live inside of these shells. The most important people of this city live in the husk of a giant crab the clan killed long ago. You can basically get their entire identity right here. They like to fight and they like to keep things as they are. And it's hard to forget who you are when you live in the remains of your enemies. When you're living among them, you need to realize they want to restore Morrowind to what it once was, which was a land you weren't in. Meanwhile, Bill was hoping for some crab stew or even a fresh batch of ash cookies, but all he got was an array of insults he didn't understand. It never progressed to assault or murder, though. You're not going to be too worried about warm welcomes when you realize you're nestled up next to the most dangerous region of Vvardenfell, Red Mountain. Ald'ruhn is a Quama Egg's throw from the Ghost Fence. In short, this is a barrier supplemented by the combined power of the gods and the souls of the dead. It fights off the horrors of Dagoth. He's the devil. Bill thought I was just being dramatic and decided to make his way to the other side. He was blasted with blight, chewed on by vampires, mauled by a diseased monster, and tripped over a cliffside. If you're wise enough to stay on the right side of the ghost fence, you're largely protected. For now. But occasionally a cliff racer flies over and a bit of blight seeps out. The ghost fence is less of an entirely secure wall and more like an active battlefield. Sprinkle that on your imagination. Also, look at where you'd be living. You're in a region known as the Ashlands. You'll be sneezing black tar after this soot fills your lungs. More importantly, avoid being eaten by a Kagudi, Nyx hounds, cliff racers, and whatever other abominations find this to be a suitable habitat, not to mention the various diseases such as blight, or even worse, corporus. On the bright side, you're surrounded by a clan of warriors actively seeking out all the smoke in a relatively well-defended city. Ald'ruhn is landlocked, but they do have a silt strider available for your travel and convenience at a reasonable price. For the Swits who don't know, a silt strider is essentially an elephant-sized insect that is guided by its exposed organs, with a portion of its shell carved out for you to snuggle into, room for luggage included. Your options for work are going to be a bit rough here, to be honest. Anything that sends you on the other side of those walls could spell your end. This isn't the place where learning comes for free, you might pay with your life. Ald'ruhn is a decently well-defended dust bowl of crab shells with what is arguably the most morally decent house in a land of slave-owning religious zealots. That doesn't save it from the fact that it's bordering hell on Vvardenfell, so for now, it goes into C tier for Crab House. All rankings are subject to change until the end. Just to our north is Ald'ruhn's little brother, Maar Gan. This town is also under House Redoran. Maar Gan is another dusty dung nut in the Ashlands ass crack, not far from the realm of Dagoth at Red Mountain. Remember, when it comes to your health, Dagoth and Red Mountain beyond the Ghost Fence equals bad. Storms, disease, and monsters oh my. Maar Gan is fairly similar to Ald'ruhn, but it's smaller, closer to the dangers of Red Mountain, and has fewer services available to you. Bill was hanging out in town when he suddenly heard an odd screech. A guard in one of the towers shouted, "Cliff Racer, get inside, you swit." Bill stood tall, hoping to impress the mighty warriors of House Redoran and slayed the winged beast with his bare teeth. Unfortunately, his bravery was rewarded with blight disease. Treatment involved a 12-hour-long ash salt and scrib jelly bath. Bill took the first silt strider out of town the next morning and didn't look back. Or forward, because there was an ash storm blinding him the entire ride. Bill couldn't be Maar Gan from this place. Maar Gan got a D for Dust Bowl. Bill proceeded into the lovely sounding West Gash. Welcome to Gnisis, the Mos Eisley of Morrowind in terms of looks anyway. This is the largest pocket of civilization you're going to find on the frontier. Here in this lovely little cesspit, you'll find some of those Redoran-style buildings we talked about earlier, with the Lord of the West Gash being a Redoran counselor. You also have some influence from the Imperial Army. You can see this with Fort Darius on site, which acts as an entryway and choke point in and out of Gnisis. Bit of a blend of influences here, both offering good protection and multiple sources of work. The town is centered around a large temple with a series of buildings surrounding it at the ground level, and then another tier of cave dwellings etched into the crescent hillside above. It's the kind of town you walk into and feel like everyone just looks at you immediately, and there's a ton of open space in the center that makes it difficult to just blend in. It has a silt strider, but despite being next to the River Samsea, had no boat transport. Bill figured he'd tap into his entrepreneurial side and start one of his own. He spent all day and all night building a small boat from scratch while the locals just chuckled at him. No one wanted to spoil the surprise that the river was too shallow for boat travel. Bill was having a great time in Morrowind. The town's economy is built around the Gnisis egg mine. Some of you Outlanders might be wondering, what did he just say? Egg mine? Yes. Morrowind is known for its mines of minerals, but egg mines provide food in the form of Quama eggs. Not only a source of food, this could also be a source of work. Unfortunately, the queen of the Quama here has caught blight disease. That makes the mine little more than a source of illness until someone brave enough comes along and cures the queen. Bill tried and caught the blight again. Getting more and more frustrated at finding a job and making himself useful, Bill took up fishing. He decided to stand in the shallow water with bait tucked between each of his toes, spear in hand. Once again, the town laughed as he was chewed to bits by slaughterfish. Even the goofball who had his pants stolen and was stuck in the river laughed. Luckily, they carried Bill and took him to the temple for healing. He had become a sort of unofficial town jester at this point. They appreciated the entertainment, needed it even to get their minds off of the daily struggle. Gnisis has solid opportunity and potential, so it finds itself in B tier. Bill said farewell to his Gnisis friends, thinking he might return someday. He made his way south to the large city of Balmora. This place is dense, with the crowded streets of a commercial hub and the Odai River flowing through its core. Balmora is under the influence of House Hlaalu. Hlaalu is the coin-focused, imperial-accepting progressives of Vvardenfell. They are clear opportunists, taking advantage of the Empire's occupation of Morrowind and doing whatever it takes to make a buck. Work with Outlanders of any type? Sure.
Where's that slave? Here not long ago.
Enslave Outlanders of any type? Also down. And while Redoran operates largely in the northwest of Vvardenfell, Hlaalu competes with them from the southwest. Bill felt like he finally found a well-maintained city. The market near the southern entrance was charming, with street vendors and storefronts offering everything you could need. There were tons of taverns for Bill to choose from. After his long journey, he settled on a place called the Council Club. It sounded elegant and regal. Maybe he could get a smooth drink and a cigar. Instead, all he got was a dagger pressed into his back and a sinister voice asking him what kind of swit outlander stumbles into the den of the Kimono Tong. Bill felt clever and responded, a silly swit who didn't want to take another scrib jelly bath before he furiously coughed in the Dunmer's face and bear hugged him. The Dunmer had no idea he had just caught a fresh case of Bilgrade blight disease. Before he could react, Bill had downed a shadow potion and vanished. He accidentally walked right into the crime syndicate of Morrowind, who hates Outlanders. Don't worry, he took a bath after that and was cured of the blight. Then he found the Southwall Corner Club, which was full of a more welcoming thieves guild. There is so much to do in this city. Bill could not stop finding work that was pouring out of every dimly lit corner from groups like the Fighters and Mages Guild and a very fun group known as the Morag Tong. Bill liked this Tong group much better than the last one. The Morag Tong is a group of assassins with legal authority, often used by political groups. Bill spent some time with them and the Thieves Guild, becoming a respected member of each. Interesting to note as well that while Balmora does have a temple, it's a considerable distance away from the rest of this tightly packed town, mirroring the idea that tradition was a secondary concern to Hlaalu, if that. Balmora is far from perfect, but it has tall walls, endless opportunities, quality services, and if you live long enough to know where and who to avoid, you can probably make a decent life for yourself here. Balmora goes into A tier for assassins under the law. It was time to head east to the Hlaalu town of Suran. Suran appeared to be a resort town to Bill when he first entered. Sitting on the shores of the lovely Lake Masobi, it was a well put together place that looked like a smaller Balmora. He could almost feel that Hlaalu commerce flowing as well as the nearby Nabia River. Not literally, because that river wasn't actually moving. Bill was enjoying himself at a local tavern, getting drunk and sharing too much about himself to complete strangers. Not long after, he was knocked over the head and woke up in a holding cell. Recovering from a hangover that made him wish he just had blight disease again, he thought he must have offended local tradition and got himself into trouble. He prepped his charisma to talk himself out of this when a Khajiit one cell over told him they were both headed for a nearby plantation. Bill was confused. Plantation? He realized he'd been swindled. A slaver who was hanging out at the northern headquarters of Hlaalu slavers, also known as Suran, chatted him up over some drinks. Bill unintentionally exposed himself as a lowly outlander with no steady job or home. That made him a prime target. Being a seasoned agent of Envy Ranger & Co., Bill spent weeks studying his environment and sneaking in coded conversations with the other slaves. He wasn't sure what they were saying to each other, but it sounded like planning. Eventually, Bill used his Thieves Guild connections to have a large case of skooma-spiked sujama left where the guards could find it. They got nice and drunk the following evening, and Bill led the slaves to a refuge in Ebonheart at the Argonian mission. Bill ranked Suran in F tier. Despite its appearance, he notes that inexperienced newcomers may be easy prey here. Bill now found himself in Ebonheart, a town far different than any other he'd visited. Ebonheart is the seat of imperial authority in Vvardenfell. The Empire runs the show here, and you can tell given the architecture and structure. It feels less like a town and more like one giant, well-defended fort. Bill started to realize the complicated reality of Vvardenfell after gossiping at a local inn. A nosy local explained to Bill that the Duke of Ebonheart was also the Grand Master of House Hlaalu, major benefactors of slavery while simultaneously being open to its abolition. Ebonheart housed the one place where escaped slaves can find refuge, again at the Argonian mission. Pretty strange. The Empire has outlawed slavery in all of their lands except for Morrowind, as it was something the people of Morrowind, or perhaps their governing bodies more so, felt was necessary and their natural-born right. At the same time, the aforementioned Kimona Tong hold sway and control over House Hlaalu, and they hate Outlanders and are all for their enslavement. Bill's head was spinning faster than a scamp on skooma after all of this, but the truth is, Ebonheart is an administrative location. This is a place of governance and the East Empire Trading Company. It's safe, well defended, and has amenities, but can you really make a new life for yourself here? Questionable. Perhaps you could find work at a warehouse or one of the local missions or businesses, but settling down here permanently might be more difficult. There's not really room for a new home in town. Maybe you could set up something on either side of the bridges leading out of Ebonheart, but that leaves you pretty exposed. Bill and I agreed that Ebonheart should go into B tier, just below Gnisis. It certainly has a case for being one of the safest and most economically prosperous places in Vvardenfell, but it's dense and closed in, not to mention jobs are probably highly desirable and given to those with connections. It doesn't seem like a community you can slowly earn the trust of and work your way up through, more of an administrative seat where you either know the right people or you don't. And you don't. Ebonheart is just across the water from the largest city in Vvardenfell. Welcome to the big show. This is Vivec, home of the god Vivec. Very humble of him. He actually lives here, in a temple made to him. I'm sure he doesn't hold it over the residents of the city though. Oh, what's that? A giant floating rock? Did he stop from crashing into the city and destroying all of Vvardenfell? He just kept it there, huh? Looming over everyone. That's interesting, and if they stop loving him, he'll let it fall into the earth and kill everybody? I suppose that's reasonable. He wouldn't do something ridiculous like put a prison inside of it and persecute anyone who doubts his godhood, though. Oh, he did. This threatening rock is known as Bar Dao, a fallen moonlet or maybe an egg holding the child of Vivec and Molag Mar. It also might just be his poop, or someone's poop. Sheogorath might have thrown it at Vivec. Morrowind likes to mix up the mythos and leave the picture unclear, just like real life. Yeah, just like real life, where God's poop is hung above you like mistletoe. except it's an enormous rock that will destroy everything you know and love if the people stop loving their god. Bill wants to leave. Can't blame him, but there's more to this place. I sent Bill further into Vivec. Not the god, just further into the city. He quickly got lost, just walking and walking endlessly. Long hallways with little distinction, the same building placed over and over again. What is this place? What kind of city is this? It doesn't even have roads. Bill's calves nearly tripled in size from all the stairs he was walking, and would it have killed someone to just put a banner over some of the connecting bridges that say something like, "You are now entering the foreign quarter"? Maybe a bit of color coordination. Nope. Guess you just gotta go inside and see who's there. Say hi, chat people up, make some friends. What a nightmare. Someone finally explained to Bill that Vivec City was comprised of 9 cantons, these tiered pyramid-like structures. Each is its own artificial island that acts like a town within the greater city. Each faction has their own little slice, but the city is primarily under the control of the Tribunal Temple. This is the religious institution that worships Vivec and 2 other weirdos who are luckily far away from us. You know how most cities have their own pockets and neighborhoods that make them unique and display their own subcultures and identity? Forget that. How about we just do nearly the same megastructure 9 times and put everyone in their own little indoor bubbles? Luckily, you're under the protection of these friendly-looking, very cheerful guard guys with the approachable name of Ordinators. Might be hard to tell, but I think this is a great place. Bill and I agreed. F tier for fantastic. We'll put it just above Suran, and I'll stand by that. Bill finally got out of Vivec and thought the next town of Molag Mar sounded new and exotic. It was even in the unique region of Molag Mar. He was joyfully walking down the road until he entered the Ashlands again. He thought at first the directions he was given were wrong. He's been duped again by these cruel Dunmer people. But he wasn't. It was Molag Mar. It just looks a lot like the Ashlands. They're very similar. This one just has some extra lava drizzled on top. He figured, well, at least I'm headed to a brand new city. Until he got there. Bill thought he had come down with another fever, or maybe he angered the almighty Vivec with his harsh review of Vivec. Perhaps Vivec cursed him so that every new city Bill found was just another canton. Bill calmed down and realized this is just the way Molag Mar was, another pyramid-like structure surrounded by water. At least this time there was only one of them. Still, it was under the influence of the Tribunal Temple and served as little more than a base for traveling pilgrims hiking to the mountainous holy points. At the very least, it didn't have the physical presence of a looming god or his egg dung. It was also much more navigable, but the surrounding area left a lot to be desired. It was a tough call, but Bill decided to move Molag Mar into D tier above Maar Gan because you could service the pilgrims and make something of a life here in relative safety. Bill knew his journey wasn't over. How could he recommend someone live in a place like Molag Mar or Vivec? Surely these lands had something better to offer. Eventually, the terrain began to change and morph into the strangest he had yet discovered. This was Azura's coast. After island hopping around for a while, Bill would find himself in the city of Sadrith Mora, which immediately greeted him with a uniquely designed slave market. Good start. It was a weird place, no doubt, even by Morrowind standards. Everyone was living in giant magic mushrooms. He felt like he was in some sort of twisted fairy tale. Jack and the Beanstalk, except it's Bill and the Mushroom Stock. Bill figured he would pay his respects to whoever ran the place, so he began climbing the biggest mushroom tower he could find. This was a mistake. Master Neloth did not appreciate an outlander crawling into his home like an unwanted spider. After a series of unrecognizable slurs, Bill found himself teleported somewhere out over the ocean. He swam back to shore, freezing, but this time he noticed all the guys were missing. Every woman in town was glaring at him like he just farted in a very silent classroom. Come to think of it, this place wasn't Sadrith Mora at all. Perhaps he teleported a bit further than he realized. This was the smaller town of Tel Mora, much further north and reserved for women.
I really don't want you around here.
Must have been through a lot of bad breakups, but they seemed to be doing well for themselves and sent Bill packing to the neighboring town of Vos. Just above Vos loomed Telvos, the Tower of Master Arian, another mage of House Telvanni. He requested a special meeting with Bill. Bill was nervous, he was about to get another oceanic dunk, but instead he found a younger mage who offered him simple advice. Head back west. Arian explained to Bill that the Telvanni were not an open bunch. Their leaders were often arrogant isolationists interested in power, slavery, unethical experimentation, and killing each other. Outlanders weren't exactly welcomed into Vardenfell as is, but they were even less welcomed by the Telvannis. The truth is, in Sadrith Mora, he'd only be accepted up to the Gateway Inn. Beyond that, he risked offending a Telvanni mage short on patience and high on violence. That's no place to start a new life. And if he thought House Hlaalu enjoyed partaking in a bit of slavery, House Telvanni made them look like interns of the practice. Even if the rest of Morrowind outlawed it, the Telvannis would do what they do best, stick their noses up, know they know better, and keep doing whatever the hell they wanted. Master Arian wasn't threatening Bill, he was just telling him the truth. Perhaps in time Arian could help reform the house from the inside, and he would reach out to Bill when that time came. Bill loved the idea of living in a mushroom after all. Arian offered to teleport Bill to a place he thought was more appealing to live in. Bill accepted and off he went. Sadrith Mora and the Telvannis were so isolated, unwelcoming, and dangerous that they filled F tier to the brim. It's not that they aren't interesting or potentially cool places to live, just that you're not really allowed to live there. Bill came to in another fairy tale, except this one didn't look cursed. Lush greenery, cozy looking homes, shops and taverns all about. The locals told him he had ended up in Pelagiad. They had limited services and no silt strider or boat, but they made up for it in spirit and decency. Bill didn't know how to tame a silt strider, but he did test the waters nearby and they could float his boat this time. He could smell the opportunity. Ferry services and fish offered to the locals and the people of nearby Vivec. He could benefit from the large city without actually having to live there. Pelagiad was under imperial influence with a high rock-inspired architecture. It had an imperial cult altar for healing and a blacksmith with supplies for Bill to start a new life. The locals warned him about bandit hideouts in nearby caves, but the town was also full of legionnaire veterans turned farmers, not to mention the fort full of active soldiers. We can even see a local Argonian is able to work his own farm instead of being another slave on a Dunmerry plantation. There was room to grow here. The town is strategically situated between economic hubs like Balmora and Vivec and close to major bodies of water. The surrounding region was a lovely sight for sore, ash-filled eyes. Bill had finally found a place worthy of calling home. Or so he thought. There was competition to be had. A local suggested one last stop before Bill made his decision. Caldera to the north, a larger mining town with a similar aesthetic. It had a comparable number of homes and shops, but the difference came with the large guard towers helping defend the city. With its size and ties to the enormous Caldera mine came baggage. Bill was making a habit of meeting with important people in impromptu meetings, and he kept the streak going by meeting with the governor of Caldera, Ald'ruhn Helvi. Helvi had a giant hall that he lived in, belittling the rest of town just by existing. Bill didn't even have to ask, he knew Helvi was Hlaalu after he asked Bill to start doing his dirty work before they even exchanged names. It got worse though. Eventually Helvi expected Bill to handle debts owed by some lowly farmers. The governor's instructions were clear. Collect the debt, if they can't pay, bring me their heads. Not literally, that's gross, but you get the point, just kill them, alright? Bill, trying to keep his composure, said, "Goodness, how much do they owe? Must be a hefty debt to warrant murder, no?" Helvi replied, 50 gold. Each. Bill had made thousands at this point, just selling nonsense he picked up on his travels, and now this leader wants people dead over 50 gold? Bill returned to Master Arian, the young Telvanni mage, with one simple request. In return, when the time came, he would aid Arian in reforming the Telvanni in any way he saw fit. All he asked was that Arian pull some strings and secure Bill a legal writ of execution from the Morag Tong for the governor of Caldera, Ald'ruhn Helvi. Arian agreed. Could this cause a power vacuum and lead to problems within Caldera? Sure, but Bill was fed up at this point. Caldera is a solid town. The surrounding region isn't as pleasant as Pelagiad, but it slides into a West Gash valley between the hellish Ashlandic terrain. Having a corrupt leader doesn't exactly make Caldera unique among the settlements of Vvardenfell, but it's still worth noting given the leader is willing to have peasant farms wiped out over an amount of gold he probably wouldn't bother bending over to pick up. Imagine the mayor of your town sentencing you to death over $50. With that being said, Bill and I deliberated over our experience in Morrowind and came to a conclusion. Pelagiad is awarded S tier. Go on, grow the town, offer them your services, be humble, and learn the way. Caldera will be placed into A tier behind Balmora. This leaves us with Gnisis and Ebonheart in B tier. I could see the latter being shifted down because of your ability to actually integrate, and boy, is that 2002 dragon statue ugly. Ald'ruhn is a decent place in a dangerous region. It's not just about surviving wildlife, storms, and terrain, but also avoiding disease. Proximity to Dagothr and Red Mountain hurts an otherwise solid city. Making some adjustments, I am going to move Molag Mar up into C tier behind Ald'ruhn, Leaves a lot to be desired, but it's not a bad place. There's even room in the Wasteworks, which is sort of the body of the canton where the average person lives and works. And as much as I don't want to, Bill and I agreed Vivec should be moved into D tier. Some may still find this harsh, but I've made my points. If you disagree, feel free to take it up with the Ordinators. Suran looks pleasant, I'll give it that. However, it's a slaver headquarters for House Lalu. Dangerous game to try and live there as an outlander. You'd likely have to work with them, or much worse, work for them, without pay, or the option to quit. Sadrith Mora and the various Telvanni towns are largely off limits to you in terms of living. Might get away with a visit, but start trying to grow your own mushroom, and things could get funky. Not a risk worth taking as an outlander without a quick save button. We also have the honorable technicality mention of Ghostgate. Every good ghost fence needs a ghost gate, and it happens to be classified as a town for some reason, though it hardly appears as one. I wouldn't recommend living here. You really can't get any closer to Dagothur and Red Mountain without just going in at this point. Still, you could get some work and a bunk, but the dangers of the Ashlands and disease are very high. Life basically trapped in a gate for safety doesn't sound ideal, and you might end up near a pilgrim who's freshly infected after a trip to Red Mountain. We'll put it at the top of F tier, but your mileage may vary. So that's it. Welcome to Vardenfell. Good luck and stay safe out there, Outlander. Not all is as it seems.